Hello friend, my name is Doombabe and today we're going to be talking about Fate Zero, which was kind of a request by this user whose name I don't really know how to pronounce, who requested I review Fate Stay Night, but I figured I would start with Fate Zero and work my way through the entire damn series, which is a lot harder than I thought it was. It follows the story of the Fourth Holy Grail War, which is essentially a secret magical battle royale that's held in Japan. 7 magicians known as Masters summon the reincarnations of legendary figures in history, which then fight for the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is a mythical item that will grant the wish of whoever wins the war. And the main protagonist is Kiritsugu Emiya, but that doesn't really mean that it focuses on him entirely. Because this series was split into 2 different seasons and it has 2 different openings, I'm not going to cover a whole lot other than the basics. For the first opening, I'm not gonna lie, I really didn't like how Saber was the main focus. I get that she's sort of like the figure that fans recognize easiest, and she was the servant of a main character, but she didn't really get any more screen time than other characters such as Lancer or Ryder. So I don't understand why they felt it was necessary to give her a main focus of just in the opening. As for the song itself, Oath Signed by Lisa is a very good song, but I felt like for the opening it just didn't make sense. It wasn't really appropriate. I feel like something a little more orchestral would have been fitting. The second opening was monumentally superior. Not only was the song a great improvement, titled To the Beginning by Calafina, but each of the characters received adequate screen time and it just felt better. I really liked how it showed the servants and the masters together and on their own. I know it sounds a little weird, but when most anime depict the characters on their own before moving on to the next, I liked how the opening showed the servants and the masters interacting with each other outside of the story. Memoria is definitely an appropriate song for both an ending and the story, both in tune and in lyrics. But I've said this in the past, stills are very, very boring. Despite that though, the stills were actually fitting and I liked the way they did them. I liked how the servants were depicted in their former lives to sort of give you an insight on what their lives were like before the Holy Grail Wars. Unlike the openings, the second closing was not an improvement whatsoever. The song Up on the Sky the Wind Sings by Luna Haruna was very bland and uninteresting, and they still insisted on using stills, so it was just really, really bad. I loved the usage of famous figures in history. It's bold in the sense that the writers felt confident enough to take it upon themselves to use very well-known historical figures and say, hey, this is how they would act and this is how they would fight. This is really shown in the episode where Saber is being criticized by Ryder for being a king that saved her people instead of teaching them how to survive on their own, and in the episode where Saber and Lancer were enemies. It showed that these people could very well get along on their own and respect each other as warriors, meaning that just because they were opponents didn't mean they had to hate each other. My biggest complaint with the use of these people is the speech. These are people who lived hundreds and even thousands of years ago, but they're still speaking in a modern tongue, and some of them were even using some minor slang. They also seemed to be very accepting of modern technology, as Ryder was watching a TV show about airplanes and he's like, yep, I'm gonna go buy all those airplanes. And then Saber just hopped onto a motorcycle and apparently had the inherent ability to not just drive it, but to weave it in and out of traffic like she's in the Fast and Furious. That aside, I felt that having a battle royale for the Holy Grail was actually a really good idea. Of course, you always hear different theories on what the Holy Grail is and what you need to do to summon it, but you don't really see people say, hey, what if you took the most noteworthy people in history and had them fight each other over and over and over again to prove themselves worthy of the Grail? The writing in general, though, really needed some work. The beginning especially it could have been very disorienting to someone who was new to the series, because you're just thrown into the story with absolutely no hand-holding and very, very little explanations as to what is going on. Even I was kind of confused at some points, especially in the background episodes for the main character, who I not only didn't give a crap about, but they had no relevance to the story at all. Once I saw zombies walking around, I just kind of rolled my eyes and waited for it to end. Also, I really hated how they decided to split up the 2 seasons, because there was absolutely no reason for them to stop season 1 right before the fight with Castor. It would have made hecka more sense if they ended the season right after the Castor fight, and then picked up on the 2nd season where that left off. Overall, the writing was really good in some parts and it was really bad in others. Thankfully, there was more good than there was bad. Despite the characters being very well designed, there was something that drove me crazy, and that was the fact that they didn't have any pupils. I don't understand why they would create such beautiful characters and then take away their pupils. I mean, in the words of Mr. Reckless Penguin, they looked like soulless hentai victims. Every single one of them. Like I said though, these are very well designed characters that are each unique in their own ways. Whether it be the 600-pound writer, these were all characters that were created distinctively enough to where you could easily recognize them in a crowd of different characters. The world was also very visually appealing. There were many different locations that were full of detail and subtle colors that created a lot of dimension. However, you usually couldn't get a good look at it because Fate Zero didn't exactly have the smoothest animation. It was kind of jumpy and jerky at times, especially in moments outside of combat. In fighting scenes, the animation was much more fluid, but there were times outside of combat where it almost felt like it was suffering a frame rate drop. Overall, I enjoyed Fate Zero. Is it my favorite anime ever? No. There were times where watching felt kind of like a chore, and I would just skip to the next episode and figure out what happened later. But in general, it's not a bad anime. The design was great, the OST was exceptional, the story itself was enjoyable, and the voice acting was very good for the dub, with the exception of children, and that's just because every time an adult tries to voice a child, it comes off just gross. My biggest complaint though is that the sound balance was very off. There were times when I would have to turn the volume all the way up just to be able to hear a conversation, but then they would play a sound effect or some music and it would just like blow you away because the volume was so loud. Even if it was at like 50% like normal, it would still be too loud. You have to turn the volume down, and then when it all went away, you'd have to turn the volume back up to listen. This was annoying as hell, and it did actually take away from the overall watching experience, so I did deduct 2 points from the overall score. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Fate Zero. Have you seen it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you gonna hate me for liking it? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, happy unbirthday, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye! So, here we are. Honestly, if I were to be honest, if there was anything I really wanted to get from you guys, it would be letters. And I know that may sound a little weird, but I get a lot of messages